Skylar Bennett stood frozen in the doorway of Sunshine Café as tears streamed down her face, her designer heels clicking against the wooden floor as she took a shaky step forward. Her 3-year-old daughter Piper had been silent for 2 years since the devastating car accident that took her hearing, and no amount of money or top doctors could bring back the sound of her little girl's laughter or even a simple mama whispered in the dark. The accident had happened on a rainy Tuesday evening when Skylar was rushing home from a board meeting, distracted by a phone call about $1 million merger. The truck had run a red light and slammed into their car, and while Skylar walked away with minor bruises, Piper's world had gone completely silent forever. But right now, across the crowded cafe filled with the afternoon chatter of strangers, a tall black man with kind eyes and gentle hands was kneeling beside Piper's table, his fingers moving in beautiful flowing gestures that made Piper's bright blue eyes light up like Christmas morning for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. For the first time in 2 years of silence and tears and sleepless nights, Skylar saw pure joy dancing across her daughter's face as the stranger communicated with her in perfect sign language, speaking a language that Skylar had never bothered to learn. The billion-dollar empire she had built from nothing suddenly meant absolutely nothing compared to this magical moment of connection her daughter was experiencing with a complete stranger who understood her silent world. Skylar's heart pounded against her chest like a drum as she watched the man continue signing with Piper, his movements graceful and confident, like he had been speaking this visual language his entire life. His name was Jackson Rivers, though she didn't know it yet, and everything about him was different from the men in her corporate world. At 32, Jackson worked as a night janitor at Lincoln Elementary School, mopping floors and cleaning classrooms to barely make ends meet as a single father to his 6-year-old son, Tyler. His calloused hands told the story of hard work and sacrifice. His worn jeans and faded t-shirt, a stark contrast to the expensive suits that filled Skylar's daily meetings. But what Jackson lacked in money and status, he made up for in heart and compassion that seemed to radiate from his very soul. He had learned American Sign Language when Tyler was diagnosed with hearing loss at age 4, spending countless nights studying online videos and practicing with flashcards until his fingers moved as naturally as his voice. Seeing little Piper sitting alone at the cafe table with tears in her eyes and sadness written across her tiny face had compelled him to approach, unable to walk past a child who looked as lost as his own son had once been. "Hi there, beautiful girl," he signed to Piper with a warm smile that reached his dark brown eyes. "My name is Jackson, and I think you might understand me." "What's your name, sweetheart?" Piper's tiny hands moved hesitantly at first, rusty from months of refusing to communicate, as she signed back Piper in letters that seemed to glow with newfound hope. Her face broke into the biggest, most genuine smile Skylar had seen since before that terrible rainy night that changed everything. "I'm so sorry. Is she bothering you?" Skylar finally approached, her voice shaking with a mixture of emotion, embarrassment, and desperate hope. She had spent so much time in boardrooms commanding respect and attention, but now she felt small and vulnerable, like a lost child herself. Jackson looked up at the stunning blonde woman in the perfectly tailored business suit that probably cost more than he made in 3 months, and shook his head with a warm smile that immediately put her at ease. "Not at all, ma'am. She's absolutely wonderful and brightened my whole day," he said, his deep voice gentle and sincere. "I have a son with hearing loss, so I know sign language pretty well. She was just telling me about her favorite color and asking if I like butterflies too." His words hit Skylar like a physical blow because in 2 years of the most expensive therapy sessions money could buy, countless appointments with specialists who charged thousands per hour, and meetings with the top experts in childhood hearing loss, no one had managed to get Piper to communicate about something as simple and innocent as her favorite color. "She actually told you that?" Skylar whispered, her legs feeling weak as she sank into the chair across from them, her expensive purse falling forgotten to the floor. "She hasn't talked about colors or butterflies. or anything fun in so long that I almost forgot she was still just a little girl inside all that. Silence. Jackson's expression softened with understanding as he continued signing and speaking, simultaneously for both Piper and Skylar's benefit. Purple, he explained, his hands painting the color in the air. And she says butterflies are magic because they fly without making any sound at all. Just like how she moves through the world now. Piper giggled silently at something else Jackson signed. A sound that existed only in the expression on her face and the way her small shoulders shook with mirth. And Skylar felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble like a dam, bursting after holding back years of grief and frustration. She had built Bennett Industries from absolutely nothing, starting in a cramped studio apartment with just a laptop and a dream, turning a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation that employed thousands of people and changed entire industries. But she had never felt more powerless or unsuccessful than during the past 2 years when her daughter retreated, deeper into silence despite every resource Skylar could throw at the problem. Money meant nothing when it couldn't buy back her child's laughter or bridge the growing distance between them. "Would you perhaps like to join us?" Skylar asked, surprised by how much she wanted this stranger to stay, her voice barely above a whisper as hope bloomed in her chest for the first time in months. "I'm Skylar Bennett, and this amazing little girl is my daughter Piper." She had introduced herself to presidents and prime ministers with more confidence than she felt in this moment. But something about Jackson's genuine kindness made her want to be real instead of polished. Jackson's eyes sparkled with warmth, and something that looked like recognition of her last name, though he didn't seem impressed by her obvious wealth or status. "I'd absolutely love to join you both," he replied, settling into the chair beside them with an easy grace that suggested he belonged anywhere kindness was needed. "I'm Jackson Rivers, and my son Tyler is at school right now, probably counting down the minutes until he can come home and tell me about his day. He'd really love to meet Piper sometime, if that would be okay with you." The simple invitation hung in the air like a bridge between two completely different worlds, offering connection where isolation had ruled for so long. Over steaming cups of coffee and rich hot chocolate topped with whipped cream, Skylar learned that Jackson Rivers was unlike any man she had ever encountered in her high-powered corporate world. He spoke with genuine passion and unconditional love about his son Tyler, about the daily challenges and unexpected joys of raising a child with hearing loss, and about finding profound meaning and happiness in moments that most people would consider ordinary or insignificant. There was no pretense about him, no agenda or calculation, just honest emotion and authentic connection that felt foreign and wonderful to Skylar. "Tyler taught me something incredible," Jackson explained, his hands moving gracefully as he signed every word for Piper's benefit, making sure she felt included in every moment of their conversation. "He showed me that communication isn't really about the words we speak or even the sounds we make. It's about connection and understanding and love that goes deeper than language. When he first lost his hearing at 4 years old, I thought I'd lost my son forever, like there was this invisible wall between us that I could never break through. But really, losing his hearing helped me find him in a much deeper way than I ever knew was possible. We learned to talk with our hands, our faces, our hearts. We learned to really see each other instead of just hearing each other." Skylar felt tears welling up in her eyes again as she watched Piper hanging on every sign, every expression that crossed Jackson's expressive face, clearly hungry for this kind of understanding and connection that had been missing from her life. "I've honestly tried everything I could think of," Skylar confessed, her voice breaking as years of frustration and guilt came pouring out to this compassionate stranger. "The absolute best doctors money can buy. The most expensive treatments available anywhere in the world. Private tutors who specialize in deaf children. Therapy programs that cost more than most people make in a year. I even flew specialists in from other countries, hoping someone, anyone, could help me reach her again. But nothing worked, nothing made a difference. Piper just completely shut down after the accident, and I didn't know how to reach her or help her or even comfort her in her silent world. The admission felt like ripping open a wound that had never properly healed, exposing her deepest failure as a mother to someone she barely knew. Jackson's expression grew soft with empathy as he reached across the small cafe table, his work-roughened hand briefly touching Skylar's perfectly manicured fingers in a gesture of comfort that sent unexpected warmth through her entire body. "Sometimes the most expensive solutions aren't the right ones," he said gently, his voice free of judgment but full of understanding. "Sometimes what we need most can't be bought with money or found in fancy offices. Sometimes it's sitting right next to us in a cafe, waiting for us to notice it." His words hit Skylar like a lightning bolt of truth, illuminating something she had been blind to for 2 long years. She had spent all this time throwing money at the problem, hiring experts and consultants and specialists, when what Piper needed most was simply someone who understood her world and could meet her there with patience and love. As the golden afternoon sunlight streamed through the cafe windows and the hours passed without notice, Skylar found herself opening up to this gentle stranger in ways she hadn't with anyone in years, maybe ever. She told him about the car accident that had stolen Piper's hearing in an instant, about the crushing guilt that ate at her soul daily like acid, about the overwhelming loneliness of being a single mother with unlimited financial resources but no real emotional support or understanding. "I have literally everything money can buy," she whispered, her voice thick with pain and regret. "Multiple houses, private jets, more cars than I can drive, accounts full of money I'll never spend. But I couldn't buy back my daughter's hearing. I couldn't buy her happiness, and I couldn't buy back her trust in me as her mother. Until today, until watching her smile at you, I thought I had lost her forever." Jackson listened without any trace of judgment or advice, occasionally signing encouraging words to Piper, who had gradually moved closer to him throughout their conversation and was now showing him her favorite stuffed butterfly named Luna with obvious pride and joy. "You haven't lost her," Jackson assured Skylar with quiet confidence. "She's right here. She's been here the whole time. Sometimes we just need someone to help us remember how to see what's been in front of us all along." "Would you mind if I ask what happened to Piper's father?" Jackson asked gently, sensing there was more pain in Skylar's story. Skylar's face immediately darkened as old wounds and bitter memories surfaced like poison rising to the top of a well. "He left exactly 3 months after the accident," she said, unable to keep the bitterness and hurt from her voice. "Said he couldn't handle having a daughter with disabilities, that it wasn't the perfect life he had signed up for when we got married. He claimed he still loved me, but he couldn't deal with the stress and the medical appointments and the uncertainty. He's never even tried to learn a single sign in American Sign Language, never made any effort to communicate with his own daughter. The pain of that abandonment still felt fresh and raw even after all this time. He sends money sometimes, like that makes up for not being here. Like he can pay his way out of being a father." Jackson's jaw tightened slightly at her words, anger flashing in his dark eyes before being replaced by something gentler, but no less intense. "That's his tremendous loss, not yours, and certainly not Piper's," he said firmly. "Piper is absolutely perfect, exactly as she is, and you are an amazing mother for loving her through everything, for never giving up, for being here every single day. Real love doesn't run away when things get difficult. Real love stays and learns and grows stronger." When it was finally time to leave the cafe as evening approached, Piper surprised everyone by clinging to Jackson's hand and signing something with urgent, hopeful movements that made his eyes mist over with emotion. "What did she say?" Skylar asked anxiously, her heart racing as she watched her daughter's animated face. "She asked if you're her new daddy," Jackson translated softly, his voice thick with feeling. "And she wants to know if she can see me again tomorrow because she has so many more questions to ask me." Skylar's cheeks burned with embarrassment at her daughter's innocent directness. But Jackson just smiled with warmth and understanding. "I told her that I'd be honored to be her friend," he explained, "and that if it's okay with Mommy, maybe we could all have lunch together tomorrow and I could bring Tyler to meet her." The hope that suddenly bloomed in Piper's bright eyes was impossible to deny. Like watching a flower open to sunlight after a long winter. "I think we'd both like that very much," Skylar managed to say, her voice barely steady as she realized this unexpected encounter had changed something fundamental in their lives. More than you could possibly know. That night, Skylar lay awake in her king-sized bed in her mansion overlooking the city, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Jackson Rivers in ways that surprised and confused her. She had run comprehensive background checks on potential business partners worth millions of dollars, had investigators dig into the lives of competitors and board members. But she knew almost nothing about this man who had effortlessly touched her daughter's heart and somehow reached into her own guarded soul. The next morning, instead of diving into quarterly reports and merger documents like usual, she did something she had never done before. She used her considerable resources and connections, not for business purposes, but to learn about someone who had become personally important to her overnight. What she discovered in her private investigator's report both shocked and deeply moved her. Jackson had been a promising college student studying elementary education with dreams of becoming a teacher when Tyler's mother, his college girlfriend Maria, died suddenly from complications during childbirth. At just 22 years old, Jackson had dropped out of school without hesitation to raise his newborn son alone, working multiple minimum wage jobs to pay for Tyler's mounting medical bills and expensive hearing aids while learning to navigate the complex world of childhood hearing loss entirely on his own. The next day at lunch, Skylar met Tyler for the first time, and she was immediately struck by what a remarkable child Jackson had raised despite facing overwhelming challenges as a young single father. Tyler was a bright 6-year-old with sparkling intelligent eyes and state-of-the-art hearing aids that he wore like badges of honor rather than sources of shame or embarrassment. "My daddy taught me that being different makes us special and interesting," Tyler signed confidently to Piper, who watched him with fascination and growing friendship. "We can have secret conversations that other people don't understand, and we notice things about the world that hearing people miss completely. Like how beautiful sign language looks when the sun hits someone's hands just right, or how you can feel music through vibrations even if you can't hear it." Skylar watched in complete amazement as the two children bonded instantly over shared experiences and understanding, their small hands flying in animated sign language conversations that needed no translation because the joy and connection on their faces spoke volumes about the friendship that was blooming between them. For the first time since the accident, Piper looked truly happy and at peace, like she had found someone who understood her world completely. "You've given them something I never could have provided," Skylar told Jackson as they sat watching their children play together in the cafe's small garden area. A sense of belonging, of not being alone or different in their silent world. "You've given Piper what I've been desperately trying to buy for 2 years, understanding and acceptance and friendship." Jackson shook his head humbly, clearly uncomfortable with praise. "You've given Piper something far more valuable than I ever could," he replied earnestly. "You've given her love that never gives up, never walks away, never stops trying. Tyler told me yesterday that Piper says you cry sometimes when you think she's sleeping, that you hold her extra tight when she has nightmares about the accident, that you learn new signs every night even though it's hard for you. That's not something money can buy, Skylar. That's pure, unconditional mother love, and it's the most precious gift any child can receive." His insight into her deepest struggles and private moments of vulnerability left Skylar speechless and more drawn to this remarkable man than she had ever been to anyone in her entire life. Over the following weeks, their casual lunch meetings became the absolute highlight of Skylar's days, the bright spot she looked forward to through every board meeting and conference call. She found herself leaving important meetings with investors early, canceling calls with international clients, and prioritizing these precious hours with Jackson and the children above her billion-dollar empire and all its demands. Her executive assistant couldn't understand the dramatic change in her priorities, and several board members expressed concern about her sudden lack of focus on quarterly projections and expansion plans. But Skylar didn't care about their opinions or worries for the first time in her adult life. She was putting her personal happiness and her daughter's well-being ahead of corporate success and financial gain. She was truly, genuinely happy in ways she had forgotten were possible. Piper was absolutely blossoming under Tyler's patient friendship and Jackson's encouraging teaching, learning dozens of new signs every day, laughing more than she had since before the accident, and slowly beginning to trust that the world could be kind and safe again. But their different worlds came crashing together in the most painful way possible when Skylar's longtime business rival, Victoria Blackwood, spotted them at the café one afternoon during what she thought was a private family moment. Victoria had been trying to buy out Bennett Industries for years, circling like a vulture and waiting for any sign of weakness or vulnerability that she could exploit. She was ruthless, calculating, and completely without conscience when it came to business warfare. Seeing Skylar laughing and relaxed with a black man in work clothes and 2 children was exactly the kind of ammunition Victoria had been hoping to find. The next morning, tabloid headlines screamed across newsstands and social media. Billionaire CEO's secret romance with janitor, and Bennett Industries stock plummets as CEO. Loses focus on love instead of leadership. The articles were cruel and invasive, painting Jackson as a gold-digging opportunist and suggesting that Skylar's judgment was completely compromised by inappropriate romantic feelings. They included photos taken without permission and quoted anonymous sources making horrible claims about both Skylar's mental state and Jackson's motives. The board of directors called an emergency meeting within hours, demanding immediate explanations and threatening to remove Skylar from her position as CEO if she couldn't adequately explain her recent behavior and reassure them about the company's future direction. "I'm so incredibly sorry about all of this," Jackson said when he saw the devastating headlines, his face etched with pain and guilt that broke Skylar's heart. "I never wanted to cause any problems for you or your company or put your career at risk. This is all my fault for not thinking about how it might look for someone like you to be seen with someone like me. Maybe we should stop seeing each other until all this negative attention dies down and people forget about it." But Skylar surprised herself with the absolute strength and certainty of her response, feeling more sure of anything than she had in years. "No," she said firmly, her voice ringing with conviction. "Absolutely not. I've spent my entire adult life making every single decision based on what other people thought was best for business, what looked good to investors, what protected the company's image. But you and Tyler in these past few weeks with both of you have shown me what's truly important in life, what actually matters when everything else is stripped away. I won't let anyone, not Victoria Blackwood or the board or anyone else, take that away from us or make me choose between love and money." Her declaration felt like stepping off a cliff into empty air, but for the first time in years, she was choosing her heart over her head, and it felt like the rightest thing she had ever done. The emergency board meeting was absolutely brutal, like facing a firing squad of people she had once considered allies and friends. Investors questioned her judgment and leadership ability. Longtime board members demanded she end her relationship with Jackson immediately, and Victoria Blackwood made a formal offer to buy the company at a significantly reduced price, claiming it was the only way to save Bennett Industries from complete collapse. "You're letting emotions cloud your business judgment in ways that could destroy everything you've worked for," the chairman warned sternly. "This relationship with this man is destroying not only your reputation, but the reputation and value of everything you've built over the past decade. You need to end it immediately and focus on damage control before it's too late to save the company." But as Skylar sat in that cold, sterile conference room surrounded by people who saw her only as a profit center, she thought about Piper's genuine laughter for the first time in years, about Tyler's proud smile when he taught her new signs, about Jackson's gentle hands showing her daughter that communication and connection were possible again. Maybe what I built wasn't worth preserving if it means sacrificing the people I love most in this world, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was saying. That evening, Skylar made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her, including herself. She called Jackson and asked him to meet her at Sunshine Café, the same corner table where they had first encountered each other and where their love story had begun, just a few short weeks ago. "I have something incredibly important to tell you," she said, her hands shaking with nerves and determination as she signed along with her words for Piper's benefit. "The board of directors wants me to choose between keeping the company I built and continuing my relationship with you and Tyler. They think you're a liability, a distraction that's hurting my business and threatening everything I've worked for my entire life." Jackson's face fell with disappointment and hurt, and he started to speak words of understanding and sacrifice, but Skylar held up her hand to stop him. "Please let me finish what I need to say. After thinking about it all day and all night, I've made my choice. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this beautiful family we're building together over any amount of money or corporate success or business empire. You and Tyler and Piper mean more to me than all the wealth in the world. Skylar, you absolutely cannot give up everything you've worked for." Jackson protested, his voice filled with concern and disbelief. "Your company means everything to you. It's your life's work, your legacy. I can't let you sacrifice all of that for me and Tyler. It's too much. It's not fair to ask that of you." But Skylar shook her head firmly, tears streaming down her face as she spoke from her heart. "It used to mean everything to me, but that was before I remembered what real love feels like. Before I saw my daughter truly happy and alive for the first time in 2 years. Before I met a man who showed me that the most valuable and important things in life can't be bought or sold or traded on any stock market." She reached into her expensive purse and pulled out a small velvet box that made Jackson's eyes widen in complete surprise and disbelief. "I know we've only known each other for a few weeks, but I also know with absolute certainty that what we have together is real and precious and worth everything. Will you marry me, Jackson Rivers? Will you let me be Tyler's stepmother and give Piper the father she deserves?" Jackson stared at the engagement ring in the box in complete shock, his mouth opening and closing without words for several long moments before his face broke into the biggest, most beautiful smile Skylar had ever seen on any human being. "Yes," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion and disbelief. "Yes, 1,000 times yes to everything you're offering." As he slipped the ring onto his finger with shaking hands, both children erupted in silent applause, their small hands clapping frantically as tears of pure joy streamed down everyone's faces. "But what about your company?" Jackson asked, still concerned about the sacrifice she was making. "What about everything you built?" Skylar smiled through her tears, feeling lighter and more hopeful than she had in years. "I have a plan that I think you'll love. I'm going to use my majority shares to completely restructure Bennett Industries as a nonprofit foundation dedicated to helping families with disabled children. We'll provide financial resources, educational support, therapeutic services, and most importantly, connection and community so no family has to face these challenges alone like we both did for so long." 6 months later, Skylar and Jackson stood at the altar of a small chapel decorated with purple butterflies in honor of Piper's favorite things, exchanging wedding vows in both spoken English and American Sign Language as Piper and Tyler served proudly as their wedding party. The ceremony was intimate and beautiful, attended by families from the newly formed Bennett Foundation and children from the deaf community who had become like extended family. The Bennett Foundation had already become a nationwide success story, helping thousands of families navigate the complex challenges of raising children with disabilities while providing them with resources, support, and hope. Skylar had discovered a purpose more fulfilling than any corporate achievement she had ever accomplished, and Jackson had returned to school part-time to become a certified teacher for deaf and hard of hearing children, finally pursuing the dream he had set aside years earlier. Their unlikely love story had become a beacon of hope and inspiration for countless families who had lost their way in the darkness of unexpected challenges and overwhelming obstacles. 3 years into their marriage, the Rivers family faced their biggest challenge yet when Tyler, now 9 years old and thriving academically, had been struggling socially in his new school, where he was the only child with hearing aids in his grade. Despite his confidence and self-assurance at home surrounded by love and acceptance, the other children at his traditional school had started bullying him mercilessly, calling him cruel names like robot ears and broken boy, while excluding him from playground games and birthday parties. One devastating evening, Tyler came home with tears streaming down his young face, signing frantically to his father about how the kids at school said he was defective and weird, that no one would ever want to be his real friend because he was too different and too much trouble to talk to. Jackson's heart completely shattered as he held his precious son, remembering his own childhood struggles with feeling different and desperately hoping that Tyler would never have to face such heartless cruelty from other children. Skylar watched her husband comfort Tyler with gentle words and reassuring signs, and felt a familiar fire of determination ignite within her soul like it had so many times during her business career. She had used her entrepreneurial skills and business acumen to help thousands of families through the Bennett Foundation's programs and services, but seeing her beloved stepson hurt by ignorance and prejudice made this fight deeply personal in ways that fueled her passion. What if we could create a school where kids like Tyler and Piper never have to feel different or left out or ashamed? She asked Jackson that night as they lay in bed planning and dreaming. A place where sign language is celebrated and taught to everyone, where deaf and hearing children learn together as equals, where every single child feels valued and accepted exactly as they are, without having to change or hide who they are. Jackson's tired eyes lit up with possibility and hope, but then practical reality set in like a cold wave. That would cost millions of dollars, Skylar, maybe tens of millions. Even with the foundation's considerable resources and donor support, building and running a school like that would be an enormous undertaking that might be impossible to sustain long term. Then we make it happen anyway, Skylar said with the same determination that had built her business empire, because some things are more important than money or practical limitations. I didn't become a billionaire by thinking small or accepting that important things were impossible. If our children and children like them need a better place to learn and grow and thrive, then we'll create it from scratch and make it the best school in the country. The next morning, Skylar began the most important and meaningful project of her entire life, reaching out to educators, architects, child psychologists, and most importantly, to families with deaf and hard of hearing children from across the country. The response was immediately and overwhelmingly positive, with parents sharing heartbreaking stories of children who felt isolated and misunderstood, who struggled in traditional schools that weren't designed for their needs, who desperately needed a place where their differences were seen as strengths rather than obstacles to overcome. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a world-renowned expert in deaf education with decades of experience, became their first major ally and supporter after hearing about their ambitious vision. What you're proposing could completely revolutionize how we think about inclusive education in America, she told Skylar during their first meeting in her foundation offices. A school where American Sign Language is taught to every single student and staff member, where deaf and hearing children learn side by side as equals, where communication takes many different forms, but understanding and acceptance are universal values. This could change everything for children like yours. Dr. Vasquez enthusiastically agreed to serve as the school's first principal. bringing with her not only decades of professional experience, but also a passion for inclusive education that perfectly matched Skylar's own fierce determination to create something revolutionary. The ambitious project faced immediate and unexpected opposition from sources that surprised and disappointed the family. Other private schools in the area saw Rivers Academy as unfair competition and began spreading malicious rumors that it was just an expensive publicity stunt designed to rehabilitate Skylar's public image after the tabloid scandal. Some members of the established deaf community worried that mixing deaf and hearing children in classrooms would somehow dilute or diminish deaf culture, or force deaf children to adapt to hearing norms instead of celebrating their own unique identity and language. "They don't understand our vision at all," Jackson explained patiently to a group of concerned parents during a heated community meeting. "This isn't about changing our children to fit into the hearing world, or forcing them to become something they're not. This is about changing the world to embrace and celebrate our children exactly as they are, while giving all children the tools to communicate across differences." Piper, now 6 years old and completely fluent in both American Sign Language and written English, became an unexpected but powerful advocate for the school during media interviews and community presentations. During a particularly moving television interview that would later go viral, she signed confidently while Skylar translated her words. She says that at her old school, the other kids used to stare at her like she was some kind of strange creature from another planet, like she was scary or sad or broken. But at home with Tyler and Daddy Jackson, being deaf isn't weird or frightening or something to be sorry about. It's just another way of being amazing and special and perfect, exactly as you are. The interview was viewed by millions of people around the world, with viewers deeply moved by Piper's innocent wisdom, unshakable confidence, and mature understanding of acceptance and inclusion. Donations for the school began pouring in from supporters across the globe who were inspired by the family's vision and Piper's remarkable spirit. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Skylar and Jackson returned to Sunshine Café, where their extraordinary love story had begun, sitting at the same corner table that now held so many precious memories. The cafe owner had installed a small commemorative plaque that read, "Where love spoke its first words in silence, and changed the world one heart at a time." As they sat holding hands and watching Piper and Tyler, now teenagers, laughing and chatting animatedly in sign language at a nearby table, Skylar reflected on the incredible journey that had brought their family to this moment of perfect contentment and purpose. "Do you ever regret giving up your corporate empire for all of this?" Jackson asked with a gentle smile, gesturing toward their children, and then toward the broader world they had helped to change. Skylar looked around the familiar cafe, then at her beautiful family, then back at the man who had taught her daughter to communicate and taught her own heart to love without limits or conditions. "I didn't give up an empire," she said softly, her voice filled with absolute certainty and peace. "I traded a kingdom built on money and competition for a kingdom built on love and service and meaningful connection. And it was absolutely the best business decision I ever made in my entire life." Their remarkable story had proved beyond any doubt that sometimes the most beautiful and important chapters of our lives begin not with carefully planned words or calculated strategies, but with this simple courage to open our hearts to love in all its unexpected forms and transformative power. They had learned that the most profound and lasting connections happen not when we all speak the same language, but when we choose to learn each other's unique language of the heart, creating bridges of understanding that can span any difference and overcome any obstacle. In building a school for children like theirs, they had actually built something even more precious and enduring, a legacy of love, acceptance, and inclusion that would continue to touch and transform thousands of lives for generations to come, proving that when love leads the way, absolutely anything is possible.